First of all, I'd really like to thank you for taking interest in how your city is going to be run. I believe that this next election is one of the most important that Nanaimo has faced in a long time. We have out-of-control spending, and overtaxation is one of the biggest challenges we're going to face as we go forward as a community. If you're like many people in the city of Nanaimo, nearly 50% at least, you're probably feeling overtaxed. And that's because you are being overtaxed. City Hall doesn't seem to listen. It doesn't matter what you say. They continue to tax and spend the same way as they have for years. I believe that it is time for change and some common sense to come into City Hall. And I'm asking for your support this November to allow me to help bring some of that change. City Hall can only take so many tax dollars out of the community before it begins to cause harm. In other words, there's only so many tax dollars in the community to go around. You and I, if we're running our household budgets, we have to sit down. We start off with, first of all, by how much money we actually have to spend, how big our paychecks are, or whatever. And then from that, we start to have to prioritize our spending. First of all, we want to take care of food, shelter, and clothing. Those are the obvious. And then we get into our discretionary spends, and by the time we get down our list of discretionary spends, if we run out of money, we just have to stop spending. However, that's not the way things are done at City Hall. The way things are done at City Hall is they add up a list of how much money they want to spend, and then they decide how much their income has to be, and that's how they set their tax rates. And that's why your taxes keep going up year after year after year. So every time that City Hall takes $1 out of your pocket, you've got $1 less to spend. That may mean the difference between buying groceries or having to go to the food bank. City Hall doesn't care how many dollars the community can afford. They're only interested in how many dollars they think they need to spend. This tax and spend mentality simply has to stop. Nearly 50% of taxpayers that were surveyed, and this is the city's own survey, that were surveyed by Ipsos Reid, said that they do not want their taxes to increase anymore, even if that means that some of their services would have to be cut. In spite of that, City Hall insists on spending more money year after year after year. For example, in the next 4 years, in the budget that's already been established, there's another 16% tax increase, and that's already baked in. That's on top of a 5% increase in your water rates year after year after year. I repeat, this tax and spend mentality simply has to stop. Nearly 50% of the people that were surveyed by the city's Ipsos Reid survey said that they're already paying as much tax as they can afford, and 26% of those people said that they would take a reduction in their services if it meant that they could lower their taxes. So if you take a look at this snapshot, which is straight from the Ipsos Reid survey, you'll notice that there was 4 options presented: was to increase taxes to expand or enhance the services, increase taxes to maintain the current levels. And on that, there was about 43% of the respondents said, yes, I think I've got enough extra money left over that I don't mind kicking in a bit more money if it's going to mean my services are going to improve. However, nearly the same percentage, 41%, said that they would cut services to maintain their current tax levels. In other words, if it means reducing services, we don't want our taxes to go up anymore. Others said that they would see their services cut if it meant that they could have their taxes reduced. So clearly, there is in the city what's known as taxpayer fatigue, in spite of many councillors' denial. It does actually exist, and I think it's something that seriously needs to be dealt with. Nanaimo property taxes did not have to increase this year, and you did not have to cut your fire services or your police to hold the line on taxes. A common reply you'll get from city council or city staff, if you ask them to hold the line on taxes, they'll say, well, just tell us what areas of safety you would like us to cut. We can cut your fire department or we can cut your police department. It's as if those are the only 2 areas that there was any opportunity for saving at City Hall. And those, of course, are 2 things that the average person doesn't want to jeopardize. None of us want to jeopardize our personal safety. But the fact of the matter is that this year, we didn't have to have our taxes increase, and we didn't have to have them go up next year either. The fact is that in the year 2013, the city of Nanaimo collected nearly $4 million in surplus taxes. In other words, they took in $4 million more than what they needed to actually run the city in 2013. In 2012, that number was nearly $3 million. So had those 2 amounts of overtaxation been applied to this year and next year's tax increases, your taxes would not have to go up this year or next year, and you would not have to give up any of your services. I believe that it is time for change and some common sense to come in at City Hall, and I ask for your support in November to do my part in that. So why do you suppose that City Hall keeps overtaxing and then keeps hanging on to those surplus taxes? City Hall prefers to refer to overtaxation as surplus taxes, and they like to hang on to every penny they can take out of your pocket. So why not return overtaxation to Nanaimo taxpayers in the form of reduced tax increases? One reason for keeping all those overtaxed dollars they take from your pocket is so that they have a slush fund available, which allows them to spend huge amounts of money without going to a referendum. By having $12 million in the slush fund, City Hall was able to build the shiny new staff office without asking the taxpayer if it was okay. By having $8 million in the slush fund, City Hall was able to buy the Lindley Valley properties, again, without having to ask taxpayers if it was okay. So, accumulating large surpluses and stuffing them away into slush funds is one way of being able to spend large amounts of tax dollars without having to ask the population at large if they think that is a good expenditure. That is what democracy is coming to in the city of Nanaimo. Zero tax increases for the next 5 years are absolutely possible, and all that is required is a city council who believes that that is an important goal to strive for, and important enough to actually do something about. By returning the extra taxes collected in the past 2 years, City Hall could have held the line on your tax increases for this year and for next year. However, they prefer to hang on to every single penny they can take from your pocket and put it away into a slush fund so they can spend it later without asking you if it's okay. After nearly 6 years of observation, I don't think that there is a tax dollar that this City Hall, made up of city staff and city council, I don't believe there's a tax dollar that they're not willing to spend. And they've dipped into accounts, and in order to buy the Lindley Valley property, they had to strip out about 22 different surplus accounts in order to pay for that piece of property. And they had to do it that way so that they could avoid coming to you, the taxpayer, via a referendum to see if that was how you wanted your tax dollars spent. So I repeat, I believe it is time for change and time for some common sense at City Hall. And in November, I ask you to vote for that change by voting for me. And I thank you for taking the time and being involved with how your city is going to be run. It's extremely important.